It's the middle of the night, and your eyes are open. The clock says a little after 3. The house is silent, and your first feeling is a small flush of dread because you're awake when you're supposed to be asleep. You start doing the anxious math on how tired you're going to be tomorrow, and you quietly tell yourself that something must be wrong with you. But here is the strange part. For most of human history, waking up in the middle of the night wasn't a problem to be fixed, but an expected and unremarkable stage of an ordinary night. People fully expected it, and they even had a separate name for the sleep that arrived before it and the sleep that followed after it. And the hour in between, the one that makes you anxious now, was one of the quietest and most ordinary parts of the day. You weren't built to sleep in one long block. You were taught to. This is the story of the sleep we lost, and why a piece of it still wakes you up at 3 in the morning. Start with a historian named E. Kirk. He teaches history at Virginia Tech. For years, he wasn't even studying sleep. He was studying the night. What people did after dark, before electricity, when the world went truly black. But here's the thing. As he read through old diaries, court records, medical books, plays, and prayers, he kept tripping over the same odd phrase: first sleep. People wrote about their first sleep like we write about lunch, casually, as if everyone knew what it meant. A character in a story wakes after his first sleep. A doctor recommends conceiving a child between the first sleep and the second. A prayer book has prayers meant for the time in between. Once he started counting, he couldn't stop. He found more than 500 of these references, scattered right across the historical record. This wasn't some rare quirk buried in a single strange diary. It showed up almost everywhere, in nearly every kind of record we have, as the most normal thing in the world. And here's where it gets interesting, because together they told one clear story. People used to go to bed not long after dark, and after sleeping for roughly 4 hours, they'd surface into wakefulness on their own. Then, around midnight, they woke up on their own. And they stayed awake for an hour, sometimes more, before falling into a second sleep that carried them to morning. 2 sleeps, with a doorway in the middle. So what did they do in that doorway? Here's the part that changes how the whole thing feels. They did nothing especially dramatic. And that was the whole point. This was the most ordinary hour you could imagine, and almost everyone spent it the same quiet way. Some people just lay there, warm and half dreaming, and thought about the dream they had just left. Some prayed. There were prayer books printed for exactly this hour, for the person awake in the dark. Some got up and stirred the fire, or checked on animals, or used the bathroom. Some quietly visited a neighbor. Couples talked, with no plan and nowhere to be. And yes, plenty of them used the hour for sex, which the medical books of the time actively recommended because people were rested and would enjoy it more. The whole interval was calm, unhurried, and completely expected. Nobody was staring at a clock counting the hours of sleep they were losing, because nobody thought they were losing anything. The waking was just the seam between 2 sleeps, and then, over a couple of centuries, it vanished. The thing that gradually erased it was artificial light. As artificial light spread, first oil lamps and gas, then the electric bulb, the evening stopped ending at sunset. People stayed up later. Bedtime slid closer to midnight. The night got shorter, and the long, roomy darkness that used to hold 2 sleeps got squeezed until there was only room for one. The middle waking got pushed out. Within a few generations, people forgot it had ever been there, and the same waking that a farmer centuries ago would have found completely normal now feels, to us, like a sign that our sleep is broken. Now, you might be thinking that this is just old writing, poems and diaries. Maybe people said first sleep the way we say beauty sleep, without really meaning 2 separate things. That's a fair doubt. But here's the thing, because this is exactly the doubt a scientist tested, in a lab, on real people. In the early 1990s, a sleep researcher named Wehr ran a quiet, careful experiment. He took a group of healthy men and did one simple thing to their world. He took away the light. Night after night, they spent a full 14 hours in complete darkness. No lamps, no screens, no glow under the door. Just the long dark that our ancestors actually lived in before we lit the night up. For the first while, the men slept the way modern people do, in one long stretch, catching up on years of missed rest. But once they were rested, something surfaced. Their sleep quietly split in 2. They'd fall asleep, sleep for about 4 hours, and then wake up. They weren't groggy and not distressed, but simply restfully awake. They'd lie in a calm, restful state for 2 or 3 hours. And then they'd drift into a second sleep of about 4 more hours and wake in the morning. Nobody told them to do this. Their bodies, given a long enough night, simply rebuilt the exact pattern the historians had found. First sleep, the watch. Second sleep. The history and the biology had landed on the exact same shape. But here's the part that should change how you feel at 3 in the morning, because he found one more thing. He measured what was happening in their bodies during that middle waking, and their brains were doing something specific. They were releasing high levels of a hormone called prolactin, the same calm, drowsy chemical your body makes when you're deeply relaxed. It's one of the most peaceful states your brain can produce, and it showed up in every single one of them, right on schedule. The men described the hour not as insomnia, but as a state closer to meditation, a quiet, peaceful, floating kind of awake. So the waking was never a malfunction. It came with its own chemistry of calm, built in, on purpose. For almost all of human history, this was simply how everyone slept, every single night. Which brings us back to you, lying there at 3 in the morning. The dread you feel isn't coming from the waking. The waking is ancient and harmless. The dread is coming from the story we tell about it. We inherited the idea that sleep is supposed to be one solid block, 8 hours, unbroken. So the moment your eyes open in the dark, you brace, you check the glowing clock, and you begin worrying about the consequences. And the worry, the racing thoughts, that's the thing that actually keeps you up, not the waking, the panic about the waking. Your ancestors woke at the same hour and felt none of that, because to them it was just the watch, the pause between 2 sleeps, a time to lie still and let the mind wander. You're not doing it wrong. You're, for a moment, doing something very old. So the next time you surface at 3 in the morning, and the clock glows, and that flush of dread starts to rise, try telling yourself the truer story, that for thousands of years, this exact hour was awake and calm and completely normal. That there's a calming chemical moving through you, the exact same one those men had, not a mistake. That the people who came before you would have known this darkness well, and would have simply waited in it, unbothered, for the second sleep to come. They would not have reached for a phone or counted the hours left until morning or told themselves the whole night was ruined. They would have simply let the dark hold them, the calm and ordinary way it had held almost everyone who ever lived. You were never broken. You were just remembering something very ancient about how the night used to feel.